Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's always so nice to have you here. Tonight's story is about Athena, the ancient Greek goddess of wisdom, strategy, and civilization. While many of the Olympian gods were associated with storms, war, or chaos, Athena was different. Even though she was considered a goddess of war, she was not worshipped as a goddess of bloodshed or destruction. That role belonged more to Ares, the god of brutal combat, rage, and the chaos of battle itself. The ancient Greeks often described Ares as representing the loudest and most violent parts of war, the clashing of swords, the fury of soldiers, and the madness spreading across battlefields. Athena, however, represented something entirely different. She became associated with discipline, strategy, intelligence, planning, and careful warfare guided by wisdom rather than emotion. If Ares symbolized the chaos of battle, Athena symbolized the mind behind victory. And because of this, many ancient Greeks respected Athena far more deeply than Ares. She was seen not only as a protector of heroes and cities, but also as a goddess of knowledge, craftsmanship, philosophy, and civilization itself. Interestingly, this idea changed somewhat during the rise of ancient Rome. The Romans worshipped Athena under a different name, Minerva. Like Athena, Minerva became associated with wisdom, learning, and craftsmanship. But Roman culture admired military conquest very strongly, and over time, the Romans often celebrated Mars, their version of Ares, far more prominently than Minerva herself. So while the Greeks often looked toward Athena as the ideal balance of intelligence and strength, the Romans tended to glorify the harsher and more aggressive side of warfare. And somehow, that contrast tells us a lot about both civilizations. Despite her calm reputation, Athena's stories could still be filled with jealousy, curses, wars, monsters, and tragedy, because Greek mythology rarely allowed even the wisest gods to live peacefully for very long. Tonight, we'll explore the complete story of Athena, from her strange and unforgettable birth, to her rivalry with Poseidon, the tragic fate of Medusa, Arachne, the Trojan War, and the rise of Athens beneath the ancient night sky. Before we continue, feel free to leave a comment and let me know where in the world you're tuning in from tonight. And if you enjoy these deep sleep stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps support the channel and allows me to make more of your favorite content. Alright then, get comfortable, and let's begin. Athena's story began with a prophecy, and in Greek mythology, prophecies almost never led to anything peaceful. Long before Athena was born, Zeus became involved with a Titan goddess named Metis. Metis was associated with wisdom, intelligence, deep thought, and clever counsel. Unlike many figures in mythology known for strength or beauty alone, Metis was feared because of her mind. And according to the ancient prophecies, Metis was destined to bear 2 children. The first would be a daughter of extraordinary wisdom and power, but the second would one day grow powerful enough to overthrow Zeus himself, which, to be fair, was exactly how Zeus had overthrown his own father, Cronus. Greek mythology had a habit of repeating itself, and Zeus knew that better than anyone. So rather than risk allowing the prophecy to unfold, Zeus decided to prevent it entirely. One day, he tricked Metis into transforming herself into a tiny creature, and once she did, Zeus swallowed her whole, which is definitely one of the strangest solutions anyone has ever come up with for dealing with family problems. But according to the myths, Metis did not truly disappear. Some storytellers believed she continued living inside Zeus himself, still whispering wisdom and advice from within him. For a time, everything seemed peaceful. Until one day, Zeus developed a terrible pain inside his head. At first, the discomfort was small, but soon the headaches became unbearable. The king of the gods roared across Mount Olympus in agony. Thunder shook the heavens. The other gods panicked. Some myths say Zeus wandered across the sky clutching his skull while storms gathered around him. Others claimed even the mountains trembled from the sound of his cries. Eventually, Zeus ordered the blacksmith god Hephaestus to help him. And depending on the version of the story, Hephaestus either used a massive hammer or an enormous bronze axe. Honestly, neither option sounds particularly reassuring. But with one powerful strike, Hephaestus split open the head of Zeus, and from within the blinding light emerged Athena herself, fully grown, fully armored, holding a shield and spear as she stepped into the world. Ancient storytellers described the moment as overwhelming. Some claimed the skies flashed with light. Others said the gods stood frozen in silence as Athena appeared before them for the very first time. Unlike the other Olympians, Athena was never a child. She arrived already wise, powerful, and prepared for war. And because she was born from Zeus's mind rather than through an ordinary birth, the Greeks believed Athena became forever connected to intelligence, strategy, reason, and careful thought. Not simply strength, but the wisdom to know how strength should be used. And from the very beginning, Athena seemed destined to become one of the most important gods in all of Greek mythology. Although Athena would eventually become one of the most respected gods in all of Greece, there was once a time when she still needed to prove herself worthy of ruling over a city. And that city would eventually become known as Athens. Long ago, the rocky land surrounding the future city was still young. Marble hills overlooked the sea. Olive trees swayed beneath the Mediterranean wind. And high above the landscape stood the great stone hill, later known as the Acropolis. The people living there needed a divine protector, a god powerful enough to guide the city into prosperity. And two Olympians soon claimed the land for themselves: Athena and Poseidon, god of the sea. Now, honestly, having two gods compete over your city probably sounded exciting at first. But in Greek mythology, these contests rarely remained peaceful for very long. The gods agreed to settle the matter through a challenge. Whichever deity offered the greatest gift to the people would become patron of the city forever. Poseidon stepped forward first. With a mighty strike of his trident against the stone, the earth split apart. From the ground burst a great spring of water. Some versions of the myth say it became a powerful river. Others claimed Poseidon created the first horse instead. But in the most famous version, the water that emerged from the rock was seawater, a symbol of naval power, conquest, and dominance across the seas. The people stood in awe. After all, the sea made Greece wealthy. Ships connected kingdoms across the Mediterranean world, and Poseidon's gift promised strength and power. Then Athena approached the stone. Unlike Poseidon, she did not create storms or earthquakes. Instead, Athena knelt quietly beside the earth, and from the ground grew an olive tree. At first, the gift seemed simple compared to Poseidon's dramatic display. But the people soon realized how valuable it truly was. The olive tree provided food, oil, wood, light for lamps during the night, and peace and stability for future generations. While Poseidon offered power, Athena offered civilization itself, wisdom, prosperity, and a future built not only through war, but through knowledge and careful thought. And so the people chose Athena. From that moment onward, the city became known as Athens. The goddess's sacred owl became a symbol of wisdom throughout the ancient world. Olive branches were woven into ceremonies and celebrations. And high above the city, the great temples of Athena eventually rose beneath the stars. Among them stood the Parthenon, one of the most famous temples of the ancient world. Even now, thousands of years later, the ruins of Athens still overlook the city from the Acropolis beneath the same moonlit sky. And somehow, it still feels like Athena never completely left. Among all the myths connected to Athena, few became more famous than the story of Arachne. Because unlike many heroes or monsters in Greek mythology, Arachne was simply a young woman with extraordinary talent. She lived in a small kingdom famous for weaving and textiles, and from a very young age, people whispered about the beauty of her work. Her tapestries were said to be astonishing. Threads of gold and deep color seemed almost alive beneath her hands. Scenes of forests, oceans, and gods appeared woven so perfectly into cloth that people could hardly believe a mortal had created them. Travelers journeyed long distances just to watch Arachne work. And eventually, rumors began spreading that her skill rivaled even Athena herself. Now, unfortunately, claiming to be better than the goddess of wisdom and craftsmanship was not usually a safe career decision in ancient Greece. At first, people assumed the stories were exaggerated, but over time, Arachne herself began boasting openly about her abilities. She insisted she was the greatest weaver in the world, better than any mortal, better even than Athena. And honestly, Greek mythology repeatedly demonstrates that publicly insulting Olympian gods almost never ends well. One day, Athena decided to visit Arachne personally. Disguised as an old woman, the goddess approached the young weaver quietly and offered her a final warning. The old woman advised Arachne to show humility, to apologize to Athena before it was too late. But Arachne refused. Proudly, she challenged the goddess herself to a weaving contest, and the moment those words left her mouth, Athena revealed her true form. The room filled with sudden light. The old woman vanished, and standing before Arachne now was the goddess of wisdom herself, crowned in silver and gold. Ancient storytellers described the two beginning their contest in complete silence. Only the sound of thread moving through looms echoed through the chamber. Athena wove scenes celebrating the glory and power of the gods, images of Olympus, victories of divine order, punishments inflicted upon mortals foolish enough to challenge the heavens. A subtle warning woven directly into the tapestry itself, but Arachne chose a very different subject. Her work depicted the gods behaving cruelly, selfishly, and deceitfully toward mortals, especially Zeus, which, to be fair, gave her quite a lot of material to work with. And despite Athena's anger, Arachne's weaving was flawless, perfect. Even the goddess could find no mistake within it. For a brief moment, Athena simply stared at the finished tapestry in silence. Then her fury finally erupted. Some versions of the myth say Athena destroyed the tapestry instantly. Others claim she struck Arachne herself in anger. Overcome by shame and fear, Arachne tried to flee, but the goddess stopped her, and in the end, Athena transformed the young weaver into a spider, condemned forever to weave delicate threads for all eternity. The Greeks believed this was how spiders first came into the world. Even today, the biological term arachnid, the scientific group that includes spiders and scorpions, still comes from Arachne's name thousands of years later. And strangely enough, the myth remained both tragic and oddly beautiful, a warning about pride and arrogance before the gods, but also a reminder that talent itself could become powerful enough to challenge even Olympus. But perhaps the following story became the most famous tragedy connected to Athena in all of Greek mythology: the story of Medusa. Long before Medusa became one of the most feared creatures in ancient legend, she was said to be a young priestess serving within the sacred temple of Athena. Ancient storytellers often described her as extraordinarily beautiful, especially her hair, which people admired throughout Greece. And for a time, Medusa lived quietly beneath the protection of Athena's temple. Until one day, Poseidon entered the sanctuary. The god of the sea had long been connected to rivalry and tension with Athena, especially after losing the city of Athens to her. And inside the sacred temple, Poseidon forced himself upon Medusa. The ancient Greeks considered Athena's temples holy places untouched by violence or desecration. So when Athena discovered what had happened within her sanctuary, her anger became terrifying. But instead of punishing Poseidon directly, Athena unleashed her curse upon Medusa herself. And if you're wondering why the all-powerful sea god somehow avoided punishment while Medusa suffered instead, honestly, Greek mythology rarely treated mortals very fairly when gods were involved. Athena transformed Medusa into something monstrous. Her beautiful hair became living serpents twisting endlessly around her head. Her face became so terrifying that anyone who looked directly into her eyes would instantly turn to stone. Some say Medusa also had two immortal sisters, Stheno and Euryale. Together, they became known throughout Greece as the Three Gorgons. Banished far from civilization, they were said to dwell at the edge of the world, among dark cliffs, ruined islands, and cold seas where few mortals dared travel. Over time, terrifying rumors spread across ancient Greece. Sailors whispered about islands filled with statues of stone. Travelers spoke of shadowy caves where no birds sang and no living thing remained alive for long. And slowly, the memory of Medusa as a human being disappeared beneath the legend of the monster she had become. Years later, her fate became tied to a young hero named Perseus. The king Polydectes ordered Perseus to bring back the head of Medusa, believing the impossible mission would surely kill him. Fortunately for Perseus, Athena chose to help him. The goddess provided him with a polished shield bright as a mirror. Hermes gave him a curved blade sharp enough to cut through anything. And guided by the gods, Perseus traveled across the world searching for the hidden lair of the Gorgons. Eventually, beneath the darkness of night, Perseus found Medusa asleep among broken ruins and silent stone statues. To avoid her deadly gaze, he looked only at her reflection within Athena's shield as he moved carefully through the shadows. The sea wind drifted softly through the ruins. The serpents around Medusa's head shifted quietly in their sleep. And then, with one swift strike, Perseus cut off Medusa's head. Then something extraordinary happened the moment she died. From Medusa's blood emerged two children fathered by Poseidon. The first was Pegasus, the legendary winged horse who would later become one of the most famous mythical creatures in all of Greek mythology. The second was Chrysaor, a mysterious warrior often described carrying a golden sword. Even in death, Medusa remained tied to the strange and tragic world of the gods. Perseus later used Medusa's head as a weapon during many of his adventures, since its power to turn people into stone remained even after her death. And eventually, Athena herself placed the image of the Gorgon upon her shield, known as the Aegis. The face that once inspired terror became a symbol of divine protection and power. Thousands of years later, Medusa remains one of the most recognizable figures in all of mythology. Not simply because she was monstrous, but because somewhere beneath the horror of the legend, there still lingers the tragedy of the woman she once was. Athena often guided heroes through wisdom, patience, and strategy. And throughout Greek mythology, some of the greatest heroes ever remembered were said to have received Athena's help. One of the earliest was Perseus, the hero who defeated Medusa. Athena also became deeply connected to perhaps the cleverest hero in all of Greek mythology, Odysseus. Unlike many warriors celebrated for physical strength alone, Odysseus became famous because of his intelligence, patience, and cunning, which probably explains why Athena admired him so much. During the Trojan War, Athena repeatedly guided and protected Odysseus throughout his long journey. Some myths even claim she stood beside him invisibly during battles, whispering strategy and advice into his mind. And after the fall of Troy, while storms and monsters delayed Odysseus's return home for years, Athena remained one of the few gods who never abandoned him completely. She helped him survive shipwrecks, outsmart enemies, and eventually reclaim his kingdom of Ithaca after years of wandering across dangerous seas. In many ways, Odysseus represented the kind of hero Athena respected most. Not the strongest, but the wisest. Athena also crossed paths with Hercules during several famous myths connected to his 12 labors. Although Hercules usually relied more on strength than careful planning, even he occasionally required divine guidance. Some stories describe Athena assisting Hercules during his journey into the underworld. Others say she helped him during impossible tasks that no ordinary mortal could survive alone. Another legendary hero connected to Athena was Jason, leader of the Argonauts. Jason became famous for his quest to retrieve the Golden Fleece, a journey that carried him and his crew across dangerous seas and into lands filled with monsters, kings, and ancient magic. According to several myths, Athena personally helped construct the Argo, the legendary ship used by Jason and the Argonauts during their voyage. The goddess was said to have blessed the ship with divine craftsmanship and protection before it ever touched the sea. But perhaps no mortal reflected Athena's connection to intelligence and craftsmanship more than Daedalus. Daedalus was regarded as one of the greatest inventors and craftsmen in all of Greek mythology. His creations were said to be so brilliant that people believed they bordered on magic. And for a time, he trained a talented young apprentice named Perdix, who was also his nephew. But as Perdix grew older, the boy began inventing remarkable things of his own. One day, after studying the spine of a fish, Perdix created the first saw. Later, he invented the compass used for drawing perfect circles. And slowly, Daedalus began to fear something he had never feared before, that his student might surpass him, which honestly never leads anywhere good in Greek mythology. Consumed by jealousy, Daedalus eventually lured Perdix to the heights of the Acropolis in Athens, and there, above the sacred city of Athena, he pushed the young boy from the cliffs. But Athena witnessed everything. Because the crime had taken place upon her sacred ground, the goddess intervened before Perdix struck the earth. As he fell through the air, Athena transformed the boy into a partridge, saving his life moments before death. Daedalus, however, could not escape punishment. For attempting murder within the sacred city of Athena, he was banished from Athens forever. And it was this exile that eventually led Daedalus to Crete, where his story would later become tied to King Minos, the labyrinth, and the tragic flight of his own son Icarus. Throughout all these myths, Athena remained deeply connected to wisdom, invention, strategy, and the careful use of intelligence, because while many gods inspired fear through power alone, Athena represented the belief that the human mind itself could shape civilizations, change destinies, and sometimes even challenge the gods themselves. Among all the great conflicts of Greek mythology, none became more famous than the Trojan War, a legendary struggle said to have lasted 10 long years beneath the walls of the city of Troy. And throughout the war, the gods constantly interfered in human affairs, choosing sides, protecting their favorite heroes, and sometimes making the entire situation dramatically worse. Athena strongly supported the Greeks during the conflict, partly because of the judgment of Paris, when the Trojan prince Paris chose Aphrodite over Athena and Hera in a contest among the goddesses. a decision that eventually helped ignite the entire war itself. And honestly, starting a war between kingdoms because of divine beauty contests somehow feels extremely Greek mythology. During the battles surrounding Troy, Athena often found herself opposed by Ares, the god of violent warfare. The contrast between them became symbolic of two very different visions of war. Ares represented chaos, bloodlust, and destruction. Athena represented discipline, intelligence, and strategy. In some myths, the two gods even fought directly upon the battlefield itself. Ancient storytellers described Athena defeating Ares not through brute strength, but through precision and careful planning. A reminder that wisdom could overcome violence. Throughout the war, Athena also continued guiding Odysseus, the king of Ithaca. But unlike earlier stories where she simply protected him, the Trojan War became the stage where Odysseus's intelligence truly changed history. The strategy of the Trojan horse. As the years dragged on, countless warriors died beneath the walls of Troy. Neither side could achieve victory, and eventually, the Greeks began losing hope that the city would ever fall. That was when Odysseus devised a final plan. A plan many ancient Greeks believed Athena herself inspired. Instead of attacking Troy directly once again, the Greeks constructed an enormous wooden horse. Inside the hollow structure, elite Greek warriors secretly hid themselves while the rest of the Greek fleet pretended to sail away. The Trojans discovered the giant horse standing abandoned outside their city gates. Some warned it was a trap. Others believed it was a sacred offering left behind for the gods. And unfortunately, accepting mysterious giant wooden objects from your enemies rarely ends well. Despite the warnings, the Trojans brought the horse inside the city walls as a symbol of victory. That night, while the people of Troy celebrated and slept, the hidden Greek soldiers emerged from inside the horse and secretly opened the gates of the city. And by morning, Troy was burning. The Trojan horse became one of the most famous symbols in all of mythology and ancient history, not because it represented strength, but because it represented strategy, exactly the kind of victory Athena herself embodied. Even after the war ended, the stories of Athena and Troy continued spreading throughout the ancient world for centuries. Poets, artists, and philosophers retold the legends again and again beneath temple fires and moonlit courtyards. And among all the gods connected to the Trojan War, Athena remained one of the most respected. A goddess not of reckless destruction, but of intelligence guiding human destiny through even the darkest moments of war. As the centuries passed, Athena became far more than simply a goddess from ancient stories. To the people of Athens, she became the soul of the city itself. And nowhere represented that connection more beautifully than the great temple known as the Parthenon. High above Athens stood the Acropolis, a massive rocky hill overlooking the city and the distant Mediterranean Sea. Upon its summit, ancient builders raised enormous marble temples dedicated to the gods. But among them all, the Parthenon became the crown of Athens itself. Constructed during the height of Athens' power, the temple was dedicated entirely to Athena. Ancient travelers described it as breathtaking. Its white marble columns glowed beneath the sunlight during the day. And beneath the moonlight, the temple almost appeared silver against the night sky. If you arrived in ancient Athens after weeks of traveling dusty roads, only to see the Parthenon rising above the city beneath thousands of stars, it probably would have felt almost unreal. Inside the temple once stood an enormous statue of Athena, created by the legendary sculptor Phidias. The statue towered high above visitors and was crafted in the chryselephantine style, an ancient technique using gold and ivory reserved for the most sacred and magnificent sculptures of the ancient world. Athena stood holding the figure of Nike, goddess of victory, while her shield rested beside her covered in scenes from mythology. The gold surfaces reflected flickering oil lamps throughout the night, causing the statue to glow softly inside the darkened temple. And behind this magnificent creation stood Phidias himself. Ancient writers believed his sculptures were so extraordinary that they seemed almost divine. Phidias was also said to have created another masterpiece of the ancient world, the colossal statue of Zeus at Olympia. That enormous throne-bound figure of Zeus, also made of gold and ivory, later became known as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. But despite his fame, Phidias's life did not end peacefully. Because he worked closely with the powerful Athenian leader Pericles, political enemies eventually targeted the sculptor as a way to attack Pericles himself. Phidias was accused of secretly stealing some of the gold intended for Athena's statue. Fortunately for him, the gold covering the statue had been designed to be removable. So according to the stories, the gold was stripped away and carefully weighed, proving that none of it had been stolen, which honestly feels like an incredibly stressful workplace audit. But even after clearing himself of theft, Phidias soon faced another accusation. His enemies claimed he had secretly carved portraits of himself and Pericles onto Athena's shield, an act considered deeply disrespectful toward the goddess. Some ancient writers say Phidias was eventually imprisoned because of the scandal. Others claimed he died before the accusations could ever truly be resolved. But like all things in history, even the Parthenon could not remain untouched forever. Wars swept across Greece, empires rose and fell. The temple was damaged by invasions, explosions, and the slow passing of centuries. Its statues disappeared, its marble walls cracked beneath time and weather. And yet somehow, the ruins still remain standing above Athens even now, broken columns beneath the open sky, silent marble beneath moonlight, a reminder that while civilizations may fade, their stories can still endure long after the ancient world disappears. As the ancient world slowly faded into history, Athena somehow continued surviving long after the temples of Greece had fallen silent. The Romans worshipped her as Minerva. Renaissance artists painted her among marble ruins and moonlit skies. And her sacred owl slowly became one of the most recognizable symbols of wisdom in the world. Even today, echoes of Athena still appear throughout modern life, in libraries and universities, in statues overlooking great cities, in stories about wisdom overcoming violence, and in the belief that intelligence can become a kind of strength all its own. Meanwhile, above Athens, the ruins of the Acropolis still stand beneath the night sky. Moonlight still falls across the broken marble of the Parthenon, and somewhere within those ancient ruins, it almost feels as though Athena never truly left. Hope you enjoyed today's story. Feel free to leave a comment and let me know what you'd like to hear next. Until then, get some rest. Good night.